everyone. My name is Taj and I am an ambassador for Get Safe Online here in Fiji. Welcome to the Get Safe Online Pacific podcast. Joining us today is our Get Safe Online Fiji advocate Savenaca Siwatubau and Samoa advocate Fua'lau Talatalaga. Also with us today is a local news representative Bob Waqasaqa. Our theme this month is misinformation or fake news. We all know it is a widespread. Misinformation or fake news is online content that can mislead or provide false information towards a particular topic. Stories can often be fabricated to cause panic or concern and heavily rely on users to critically determine what is trustworthy or not. Let's get started. I would like to pose this question to Mr. Fua'lau. How much of a problem is fake news and misinformation in the Pacific? And is there any danger from it?
Greetings and talofa. I think, first of all, I'd like to thank our colleagues from Get Safe Online and also our Pacific advocates for availing this time to discuss. I think this is really crucial, and it's also critical in our broadcasting, formal broadcasting space, and also in mass media right throughout across the Pacific. With the question asked, I believe that this is one of the many problems that we are facing now in the Pacific region. This some sort of new phenomenon in the world, the evolution of information technology and communications nowadays. The emerging of misinformation, disinformation, and fake news. It's something that is it's just growing rapidly, and it's increasing its impact in the Pacific and, of course, our people. I know that in the olden days, our Pacific ancestors used to communicate on various traditional means of communicating to families, and even within our local communities. And this is where we have this approach of talanoa, because we Pacific people, we love to talanoa, whether it's family matters, it's government, or even communities and in school, we love to communicate. And we talanoa also as a platform to resolve issues, and mostly the problems in the villages, in the districts, the communities. But nowadays, with emerging and the uptake of technology and the evolution of the information age we are living now, it's getting much more complicated than we ever thought. Who said this, and is it true? Because having these platforms and these social, they call it over-the-top technologies, having these platforms available to nowadays in our communities in the Pacific region really impacts the way we live, also the way we communicate. So of course it is a problem now, because having those platforms available to almost every Samoan is very challenging, because people loves to hear news, and that's our Pacific way, our norm. We love to hear news. We love to hear about our families, what is happening out there, what is one other person is saying about the other person. So gossiping also one of that factor involving all this misinformation and fake news. But the challenge now posed to our communities, and including Samoa, everybody's a reporter now. We have to have traditional reporters where they go to school, they go through journalism programs, and they graduated And those were the source of news we relied on from traditional companies that really set up in your own country, where we all hear the right information about. Nowadays, if you have an account on any social platform, you're a news reporter as well. You report things happening around your environment. You report things that are happening within your circle of friends and communities. So hearing all this from everywhere and believing everything that is said on these social platforms, it is a challenge. And it really impacts our communities because we don't know who wrote this post. Is that person exist? Is that real? Is that news? Or is just fake? So of course it is a problem now, and it's really affecting our communities. Also within our own families. Um, so of course, to answer your question, it is a problem now, an emerging problem and challenge that we are facing in our communities as well.
Thank you. We believe that it is fake news and misinformation do get spreaded. So, in terms of that, my next question is to Mr. Wangasanga. How are these fake news and misinformation normally spread online?
Thank you for that. So just going back to what Mr. Fua'lau has mentioned, the fact that we live in a community where everyone, to a certain degree, we all love to talk. I mean, let's be honest, if our neighbors are fighting, as much as you'll want to guise the fight, your ear is listening out for it. It's because we've grown up accustomed to the kind of lifestyle that we have of sharing information, whether it be word by mouth or just, a coconut wireless sort of thing. Whereas online, it's sort of the same thing. There's somewhat a degree of doubt that comes into play. When I say degree of doubt, this is where, on a day-to-day basis, on a normal daily routine, you wake up, you brush your teeth, you go to work, go to school, wherever it is that you're doing, you have a certain degree of doubt going about you. You doubt that the bus might come in time, or you doubt that a political decision that's made by the current government of the country that you're living in will be the right decision. We go day to day with doubts, and that's just how human nature is. So when you consider that, and then you go online, whenever there's a problem that's posed forth, for example, a new variant like we have right now, the Omicron, or even previously the Delta variant, there's a huge level of doubt that comes into play. So when a person already doubts, when they're online, immediately straight after, they want to share that information. And the reason why they share that information is because they doubt, and they want to share it with someone else that feels or is, acting in a certain way that you feel, oh, they might benefit from this. So just going back to your question as well, how fake news and misinformation normally spread online, it's because of naysayers, or when you read up something and you already have doubts inside of you, that information will just solidify that doubt inside of you. So already, I think one way that we can step away from this is if people educate themselves with whatever it is that's happening. I remember something that we had in primary school and even in high school as well. This is where you were tested on your current affairs knowledge. And as a kid, I'll be honest with you, I thought it was so mediocre, it was useless, and it was something that I considered to be a waste of time. Growing up later, I realized that no, this is so important because you have to consider current affairs and then apply it to your life as well. So yeah, just going back to what you said, yeah, you have to be updated with the current affairs because you will then make educated decisions whenever you see fake news online.
Thank you. So to Save, I would like to ask you, what are some of the examples of this common fake news and misinformation that are circulating online, and if you have experienced any?
Bolabinaka to everyone, Bolabinaka to Tads and our two guests for this session. First of all, a big vinaka level to GSO for organizing such a informative session where people can learn and know the dangers of misinformation. Examples, there are many example studies. The current crisis of COVID-19 has given us a clear indication on the dangers of misinformation. One of the main misinformed uh, media or the topic that was shared among Pacific Islanders was that COVID-19 can be cured through steam bath and herbal medicine. This has caused so many problems and so many frustration to the community because it gives them a false sense of hope that this type of type of information presented for the cure of COVID-19. And there are many others. Many of them are political in nature that even make a nation like Fiji comes to a standstill because of the misinformation that was spread throughout the social media. That is the danger in this category of false news and misinformation and disinformation. And there are many examples out there. Ministry of Education, recently the Fiji Ministry of Education was trying to tackle the misinformation in terms of the date of reopening, school reopenings. That is the dangers in it, and it gives a false sense to the parents that in some way contribute to the stress of preparing the children for the school reopening, and even to the teachers and the community as a whole. But those roughly are some of the few examples that came into mind. But in a broader sense, there are many other ways of or examples of misinformation. But in terms of what we are currently discussing, I think those two are the current one and is relevant to this topic. Pinaka Taj.
Pinaka. And with the said examples, how have you dealt with these cases? If you have seen it online, and then how do you deal with these types of cases? Are there any certain procedures to address these fake news and misinformation online?
Yes. In terms of law enforcement side of things, we usually request the social media app owners or the company behind the social media app to help us in removing or blocking the sharing of such misinformation. That is one way that we usually deal with it, and the other way is to encourage the source of information, either the Ministry of Education or the Ministry of Health or whoever is the reliable source of information, to put in a counteractive message or media release that can have some truth that can counter the misinformation that has been spread before through the fake news. So those are the two types of engagement that we usually, or the two types of approach that we usually undertake as law enforcement for us to help or prevent the spreading of the misinformation by requesting legally to the owners of the social media app or whatever platform that has been used, or in the other hand, to help the main source or the owners of the information put out a media release to counter the misinformation that has been spread or has been published.
Yeah, and we also urge the members of the public to trust the reliable sources and just to cross check if the information is coming from a reliable source. That is also important as part of being the members of the public as well. So in terms of that, I would like to go back to Mr. Waqasaqa. Why is it so easy for fake news and misinformation to spread online?
Thank you for that question. That's a bit of a mind twist, I'll be honest with you, because some people say it's hard, some people say it's easy. But with all things considered, we have this natural, I think it's just human instinct, where we are naturally just gossipers. Going back to what Mr. Fua'lau said, the way we live in the Pacific Islands is in such a way where when you first wake up, even in the morning, you don't brush your teeth, you don't look at your wife or your husband or your kids and you tell them how much you care about them. The first thing that you do when you wake up is you go on your phone. And I'm pretty sure everyone can agree to that. Yeah, everyone can agree to that. And it just goes to show that everything that we do is revolved around social media, which is also why it's easy to spread misinformation on social media, because everything that we do is on social media. Whether you go for lunch break, you take a nice picture, you upload it to your story. And even with that being said as well, the other reason why it's so easy to spread things online is because it's all just on the click of a button or a touch of a screen. Whether you are just sharing it to try and educate the other person and tell them like, hey, this is wrong, you are still to a certain level sharing the fake news. Even if you're trying to say like, hey, this is wrong, you're not supposed to be sharing this, you're still doing what we're trying to advocate against. I guess the reason why boiling it down, the reason why it's so easy is because it's accessible to everyone and anybody can do it.
Yes, absolutely. I agree, because the information placed on the social media specifically, most of the people would like to believe, and they have the intention to actually believe those information because they've actually seen it at the first place. And most of us, it's human nature, we believe, we don't go back or look for information elsewhere just to cross check or see if it is coming from a reliable source or no. But whatever we see at the first sight, we want to believe that. That is human nature. And then other parts would be trying to comment and share it with our families and friends, just to say, hey, we heard this happening online. So there it goes. So, Mr. Fua'lau, if we are not sure if a certain post or article online is fake, what should we do?
Oh, well, thank you very much. Different people react to different sort of news. If it's fake or it's news, we all have different reactions depending on your interest. So, we as government, we've seen this as a way that it's challenging. The way government communicates to its citizens, and also how government services impact on communities. So, as alluded to my colleagues earlier, we have to really correct when it is time to correct. As they say that the only time to straighten an iron is when it's hot. So I think we have to get out the right information at that point in time, for whatever reason or intention of that post or that information when it's out there. But again, of who receiving it, that really depends how they deal with it. Because as I've said earlier, we love gossip. And that's the nature of us being in the Pacific. We want to be the first to spread the news. We want to be the first, to heard of that we, said something about whether it's, this or that. So in that sort of nature of us, it really also changes the way we perceive things, and we have to stop if we know that it is wrong and it is fake and misinformation. So that's our role in government. We do have to centralize all our media releases to the public. So whatever government agency, office or state-owned enterprise, it has to go through our press secretariat to release any information and also correct at the right time. But that's the challenging though, because we do have freelancers as well. And as I said earlier, everybody's a news reporter nowadays. The police get the last of the phone call when there's an incident on the road, and those people that just pass by, they just took the video of the whole incident when it's happening, and even interview people that's on site. So These are things that it's challenging the role of government and administration from time to time. But again, these platforms were built in a way that we enhance our businesses and also enable us to communicate. But of course, there's always challenges that comes through these developments. So hence why our legislations and our policies, the way we cooperate between countries and organizations and even international partners, we have to build those relationships and we have to build those cooperation because we cannot fight alone in all these challenges that we are facing now. If it's impact heavily on great economies of scale, it's now impacting our very small economy of scale as well. So we are all in the same fight, and I think inclusive, and it's a shared responsibility that we need to stand up and correct when we all know that it is wrong. And we have to do it right at the time that it's happening. Otherwise, it will be spread as a gossip and ended up it's a fake news. And who knows, a life could get lost. Someone might get hurt. So that's the impact, and that we are the government, the administration of the day, that we need education and we need awareness, because I think those are the only possible way we see that we need to educate our population. We need to educate our communities and ensure that we do a lot of awareness. So thanks to Get Safe Online and all the other partners that has been helping out with our outreach program, because that's the only way that we could communicate to our people so that they can make the right decision. What is fake? What is misinformation? And what is the truth? Thank you.
Thank you. And I usually say this in terms of what we should do. When in doubt, just throw it out, which means to say if you are in doubt, just ask people around you rather than spreading that information. It's always wise to ask. There's no harm in asking. In terms of that, Save, is there any law that is against posting fake news or misinformation?
With the current development of technology and the use of technologies, the laws, the government is also looking at updating the laws and its policies and legislation to be in par with the current use of technologies, with the current use of issues, the current issues such as misinformation. So that is one thing that I can reassure the listeners today and those who are tuning in, that the government are looking into providing legislation to cover for this type of issues.
Thank you. So we came to the end of this podcast. I would like to thank Mr. Waqasaqa, Mr. Siwatubau, and Mr. Fua'lau for being our guests. And I hope the members of the public got a lot of information through this session, a lot of information as in what to do and what not to do, what to trust and what not to trust, from where to trust and from where to not trust. There are certain authorities as well that you can actually rely on most of the times. You can cross-check with these authorities or just check out the websites, and get the information correct. I would like to thank all of the guests, the members of the public, by listening to this podcast. For more information and online safety tips, visit your in-country Get Safe Online website, a project funded by the UK Commonwealth Cybersecurity Program. Thank you.